It started with a cryptic email that arrived in the inbox of the Michael Jackson fan club headquarters in Los Angeles. The message contained no name, no signature, just coordinates and a date, June 25th, the anniversary of his death. Sarah Chen, the club's president, stared at her screen in disbelief. The coordinates pointed to Forest Lawn Memorial Park, specifically to the Holly Terrace where the King of Pop rested. The email claimed that something extraordinary had been hidden at the site, something that would change everything fans thought they knew about Michael's final days. Sarah's hands trembled as she forwarded the message to 3 trusted members. Marcus, a music historian who had dedicated 20 years to studying Michael's work, Elena, a private investigator who specialized in celebrity cases, and David, a former security guard who had worked at Neverland Ranch. They agreed to meet that night, each feeling the weight of what this could mean. The email had included one final line that sent chills down their spines. He left you the truth. It's been waiting for 15 years. As midnight approached, the 4 friends gathered in Sarah's apartment, surrounded by memorabilia and gold records. They debated whether this was an elaborate hoax or something genuine. Marcus pulled up satellite images of Forest Lawn, studying the terrain. Elena ran background checks on the email's routing information, trying to trace its origin. David sat quietly, remembering conversations he'd had with Michael about legacy and secrets. The clock struck 12, and they made their decision. They would go to the grave, not to disturb it, but to investigate the surrounding area. If something was truly hidden there, they would find it. The King of Pop deserved to have his final wishes honored. Whatever they might be, Forest Lawn Memorial Park loomed before them like a sleeping giant under the pale moonlight. Security cameras swept the grounds in predictable patterns that Elena had memorized from weeks of observation. They had planned this carefully, knowing that any misstep could end with arrest and scandal. Sarah carried a modified metal detector disguised as a walking cane. Marcus brought ground-penetrating radar equipment hidden in a photography bag. Elena handled the security bypasses, while David kept watch, his years of training making him hyper-aware of every shadow and sound. They reached the Holly Terrace at 2 in the morning. Michael's private alcove stood behind ornate gates, but the email's coordinates actually pointed to a rose garden 15 feet to the east. Sarah's detector began clicking immediately. Beneath a white marble bench, installed a year after Michael's death, the signal went wild. Marcus carefully examined the bench foundation and noticed something unusual. One of the decorative panels wasn't marble at all. It was sophisticated composite designed to look like stone. His fingers found a hidden seam. With Elena's tools, they carefully removed the panel, revealing a weatherproof titanium box approximately 12 inches square. David's hands shook as he lifted it out. The box was heavier than expected and completely sealed. On its surface was engraved a single image, Michael's famous fedora and a moonwalking silhouette. Below it, in elegant script, were the words for those who believed. Inside the box, wrapped in protective material, they found 3 items that made them gasp. First, a USB drive labeled "The Real Story," in my own words. Second, a handwritten letter dated June 23rd, 2 days before Michael's death. Third, a small key attached to a safety deposit box number from a Swiss bank. The letter began with the words that would haunt them forever. If you're reading this, then they succeeded, and I need you to know what really happened. They couldn't open the files at the cemetery. Racing back to Sarah's apartment, they set up her laptop with military-grade encryption that Elena provided. Marcus inserted the USB drive with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The folder contained 47 video files, each labeled with dates spanning from 2007 to 2009. They clicked on the first one. Michael's face filled the screen, looking tired but determined. He sat in what appeared to be a private recording studio, speaking directly to the camera. His voice was clear and purposeful as he explained why he was making these recordings. He had discovered something devastating about the music industry, about people he trusted, about contracts he'd signed without understanding their full implications. He spoke of manipulation, of substances administered without his knowledge during the grueling "This Is It" rehearsals. He detailed meetings where powerful executives discuss him like he was a product to be controlled rather than a human being. The videos revealed a conspiracy that went deeper than anyone had imagined. Michael named names. producers who had exploited him, doctors who had prescribed dangerous combinations of medications, business partners who had been systematically draining his assets. He had evidence, he explained, stored in multiple locations. The safety deposit box key was just the beginning. Each revelation hit the four friends like a physical blow. They watched video after video through the night as dawn approached. Michael's message was clear. He knew he was in danger, and he wanted the truth to survive even if he didn't. In one particularly emotional recording, he spoke directly to his fans. His eyes filled with tears as he thanked them for their loyalty, for believing in him when the world had turned cruel. He apologized for not being able to finish what he'd started, for leaving them with questions. But he promised that if they were watching this, it meant they cared enough to seek answers. The final video on the drive was dated June 24th, just one day before his death. Michael's face in the last video was different from the others. Fear had replaced determination. He was no longer in the studio, but in what looked like a bedroom, filming on a handheld camera. The shaky footage and whispered voice made everything feel urgent and terrifying. He spoke quickly, explaining that things had escalated beyond his control. He had confronted his doctor about the medications, had threatened to expose everything to the media. Now he believed his life was in immediate danger. He had already hidden copies of evidence in 7 different locations worldwide, with instructions for trusted associates to release them if anything happened to him. But something had gone wrong with his network of confidants. Someone had betrayed him, and he wasn't sure who. The safety deposit box in Switzerland contained the master files, financial records, recorded phone conversations, signed confessions from people who had agreed to testify. Michael had planned to hold a press conference after the first London shows, to reveal everything when the world's attention was on him. He would have been protected by the spotlight, or so he had hoped. But they had moved faster than he'd anticipated. As they watched, Michael suddenly looked off camera, fear flashing across his face. Voices could be heard in the background, getting closer. He turned back to the camera one last time and said words that would echo through their mind forever. If I die in the next few days, it wasn't an accident. Look for Conrad Murray, but don't stop there. Follow the money up the chain. The truth is in Box 779 at Credit Suisse Geneva. The password is Neverland Never Dies. Tell my children I fought for them until the end. The video cut to black abruptly. Sarah, Marcus, Elena, and David sat in complete silence. The implications were staggering. They weren't just holding evidence of negligence. They were holding proof of something far more sinister. Morning light streamed through Sarah's windows, but none of them had slept. The weight of Michael's final message pressed down on them like a physical force. They now faced an impossible choice that would define the rest of their lives. Elena had already begun researching the safety deposit box. Credit Suisse Geneva would require identification, authorization, and likely legal documentation to access. They would need lawyers, media support, and protection. Going public meant painting targets on their backs. The people Michael had named in his videos were still powerful, still connected, still capable of making problems disappear. Marcus argued for immediate release. Upload everything to the internet. Send it to every major news outlet simultaneously. Make it impossible to suppress. David countered that they needed to verify everything first, to ensure they had a complete picture before starting a war they might not survive. Sarah sat quietly, holding the handwritten letter they hadn't yet read aloud. She unfolded it carefully and began to read Michael's elegant handwriting. The letter was more personal than the videos, filled with his hopes for the future, his love for his children, his gratitude for his mother. But it also contained specific instructions for whoever found his hidden message. He had anticipated their exact dilemma. Michael wrote that he understood the danger he was putting them in, and he gave them permission to walk away. He wrote that the truth was important, but not more important than their lives and families. However, if they chose to move forward, he had created a path for them, lawyers already briefed and paid, journalists already investigating, allies in positions of power who were waiting for this evidence. All they had to do was make one phone call to a number he provided. The four friends looked at each other, years of loving Michael's music and defending his legacy hanging in the balance. They thought about his children, now grown, who deserved to know what really happened to their father. They thought about the millions of fans worldwide who had never stopped believing. Sarah reached for her phone. Elena placed a hand on her arm, asking one final time if they were sure. Marcus and David nodded slowly. This was bigger than them, bigger than their fae. Michael Jackson had trusted them with his truth, and they would honor that trust. Sarah dialed the number. On the third ring, someone answered with the words, "We've been waiting for your call." The king of pop's final message would finally be heard, 15 years after his voice had been silenced. The truth, as Michael had promised, would set them all free.